Welcome to An Unconventional Life, a podcast where we share stories about the crazy 1% out there who earned their doctoral degrees and then went on to use them in crazy, cool, unique, and unconventional ways. Here's your host, astrophysicist turned teacher, author, dissertation coach, and more, Dr. Russell Strickland.
This is Dr. Russell Strickland here, host of An Unconventional Life podcast, where I feature the stories of the unconventional 1% who not only earned their doctoral degrees, but went on to leverage them in strange, exciting, cool, and unconventional ways throughout their lives and their careers. Today, I've got Dr. Jeremy Weiss with me, and he's conducted interviews with literally thousands of successful entrepreneurs, investors, and CEOs. And we flipped the script a little bit today, and he's going to be interviewing me. So, Dr. Weiss, thank you so much for being here.
Dr. Strickland, thanks for having me. I'm really excited about this particular episode. We were talking beforehand, and this has been a crazy journey, a crazy ride, and you have some really interesting stories. We're going to dive into those. And before we do, the episode is brought to you by Dissertation Done. And I always tell people when I describe you, Dr. Strickland, it's like picture rocket scientist meets management consultant. Because listen, you've lived there, you breathed this, and you started it because of the huge pain you had with dealing after studying astronomy and astrophysics at the University of Chicago, and you've mentored thousands of students over the past 20 years. So if people have questions, and people always do, and they call you because they're frustrated with the process, they can go to dissertationdone.com and check out more. You help everyone from business to nurses to education to psychology, anyone who studies people in a data-driven way. So Dissertation Done, check it out. I really want to talk about your path, your journey, because you have this winding path. Maybe talk about, why, leading up to University of Chicago, what did you want to be when you grew up?
So honestly, I've always taken challenges as they've come up. I've taken challenges as a challenge, basically as a dare. And so when someone said, "Oh, well, this is tough or that's tough," I'll go give it a shot. And so that's kind of how I fell into my path in college. Is I ended up double majoring in physics and math. And it was
you're a glutton
really,
for punishment.
Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, it turns out that there was a lot of overlap between those two degrees. So it was really like 1.3 or 1.4 degrees, not 2. But it still counts. I got 2 of them on the wall, so that's cool. But anyway, and then from there, I began doing research as an undergraduate. I was actually lucky enough to find a mentor and someone to work with. And I was really doing kind of graduate level research. We published while I was an undergrad. And that kind of set me on the path to studying astronomy and astrophysics. And I was lucky enough to follow my undergraduate mentor. He was an alumnus of the University of Chicago. And I was able to go there as well, which was amazing. I grew up in a fairly small area, and moving to the big city, Chicago, was a lot of fun.
Where'd you grow up?
Grew up in North Carolina. So I live right now. My office is not 30, 40 miles from where I grew up.
Nice.
A little bit bigger suburb here. But that was one of those things where I grew up here. We moved to Chicago. At some point when I met my wife, we decided that neither one of us really knew how to have a dog and raise kids and have a house in a city like Chicago. So we decided we were going to move to the suburbs. And then if we were going to move to the suburbs, instead of moving to the Chicago suburbs, we decided to move somewhere where we thought at least the real estate would be a little cheaper. All those Yankees had come down in the meantime and really driven up real estate prices around here.
What were you doing research on at the time?
So a couple things. As an undergraduate, I was studying something called radiative shocks. So when a star blows up, certain stars, when they're big enough, at the end of their life, they actually lose all of their heat generating at the inside of the star. It collapses on itself, and then it kind of bounces and it blows up. It's called a supernova. And we studied how those shock waves go out into space, basically. They form really nice, cool-looking patterns, and there's an instability that acts a lot like a spring that we discovered and worked on. So that's what I was doing as an undergrad.
That's what happens to your students' heads when they try and get through this process. It just explodes.
It resonates.
We should have called this the Supernova podcast or something.
But from there, I went on from studying exploding stars to the exploding universe. So if one wasn't bad enough, I went into working on cosmology, which is kind of the study of the Big Bang and how the universe as a whole evolves. And we were working on, at that time, what we call the dark matter problem, which is still unresolved. We've learned a lot of things since I was a graduate student, but we haven't figured that one out yet. So maybe at some point I'll be able to retract that statement and say this is kind of the answer. But that's what I was working on. And my advisor there was a really, really great guy, super larger than life guy named Dr. David Schramm. And so that's who I was working with for a number of years there at the University of Chicago.
So I know we talk about the unconventional life and the unconventional path. Initially, you took the conventional path. So
that's exactly what we've been talking about. Yeah, that's the traditional high school, college, graduate school. Yep.
So at what point do things shift for you?
Well, so I mentioned my advisor who I was working with, and in academia, really, you count on your advisor to kind of help you with the next step in your career. It's very difficult to go from being a graduate student to a postdoc to a faculty member. And about a year or two before I should have been wrapped up, my advisor, Dr. Schramm, died unexpectedly in a plane crash. He was actually heading to his home in Aspen just before the Christmas holidays. So at that point, that was a close mentor, someone that I had a personal relationship with, but also the person who was going to help me kind of with the next step of my career. And I just kind of reevaluated things. I burned out a little bit, to be quite honest, but I reevaluated things a little bit. And I said, I'm tired at this age of being like a poor starving graduate student. There are banks downtown that like guys that know how to deal with numbers. So I decided to get a job doing kind of computer work. And that's what I did for a few years. But I eventually kind of felt that call of, I left something unfinished. This notion of being a doctor, of kind of finishing that path, the academic path that I'd started, was important to me. It was kind of how I identify myself. And so kind of like the Godfather from, Godfather Part 3, and when I thought I was out, they kind of pulled me back in. I felt it was time to go back to school. And this time I took the unconventional path.
I want to just freeze at that moment for a second. First of all, I'm sorry to hear that. That's just a tragic event. Do you remember, how did you hear about it and what were your thoughts? Because that's like someone you probably spent a lot of time with.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember exactly when it happened. I don't remember if I heard just after the first of the year, because it was very close to the Christmas break. I don't know if it happened just before we had left campus, but it was big news, and it was just, there were no words. I mean, it was stupefying. This is somebody who really, really was larger than life. I could spend a lot of time sharing his stories, but I can tell one just real quick. I don't remember all the details, but he was mountain climbing, like literally with the pick and all this kind of stuff, with a colleague, and so the way they were doing this, they were tethered together, and Dr. Schramm had the lead. He was up higher, and so the guy below him was tethered to him, so that if he slipped, he would be able to Dr. Schramm would catch him, and he would be able to regain his composure. Well, as it turned out, Dr. Schramm slipped, and he started to fall, and he's going down, and the rope is loose, and the guy knows, oh my God, I'm getting ready to be the top guy on this rope, and he's digging in as hard as he can, trying to make sure that he's going to be there when that rope catches. And it catches, and he looks down, he's like, oh my God, are you all right? And meanwhile, Dr. Schramm is laughing maniacally at the bottom of this rope, and he's like, you should have seen your face. And that's what kind of guy he was. He was literally facing like imminent death at that point. There was a certain probability of that happening, even though they all knew the safety procedures and everything. This was dangerous stuff.
Yeah.
And that was his thought, was, man, oh man, that guy is really wigging out as I go flying by him.
Sounds like he had a really good
Unique
sense of humor. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that made you reevaluate everything. At that point, were you thinking, wow, like life is short? Like what are you thinking at that point when you get that?
Gosh, I mean, I don't know how much of it was that, but it was kind of, I was looking at it honestly, selfishly. What am I going to do? I have to kind of start over again. And I already had kind of like the best mentor. I mean, there were lots of great people there, no doubt. But that was kind of my thought is, I already had the best mentor, and now I kind of have to start over again. And so I just decided that maybe it was time to do something else for a while. And to actually, make a little bit of money and act like an adult, basically, because I was probably in my mid-20s at that point, but I had been living at home or at school my entire life. So I figured it was time to kind of get a job and do some of those other things. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to come back at some point or if that was a real turning point for me. I just knew that at that point, it was the right time for me to try something else.
So you decided eventually to come back.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Well, so it wasn't exactly coming back, but it was kind of like coming back, I guess. So I had, gotten a job, I'd moved, I had done a number of things. We ended up having a startup company that I was working for. We ended up having layoffs. There were 2 rounds of layoffs. One when the economy was doing pretty good, and I was in the room where we were told, hey, those other guys are all getting laid off today. And then a little bit later on when the economy wasn't so good, I was in the other room. So I almost think that I got unlucky by missing the first round of layoffs. But at that point, I had to kind of decide, okay, well, what do I want to do? The economy's not so great. And to me, the fallback was, well, gosh, I've always wanted to get my doctoral degree to finish up. I've been doing more and more business-related things over the past few years. And so I thought maybe let's get some solid footing in that world and actually get a degree. And there was no point in getting a master's degree at that point. As far as I was concerned, I would just go for my doctoral degree. And I went for a PhD in organization and management at that point. But the only way I could do it was this unconventional approach that so many of our students use now, because I looked at some of the traditional universities at the time, and they were all like, nope, you got to be back here all day, every day, 70, 80 hours a week, working and studying and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, that's just not where my life is right now. I have a wife. We're trying to have kids. I mean, I have a mortgage. I can't do that anymore. And so that's when we went the unconventional route. I found Capella University, which is a great online institution. And they fit in with my schedule, being able to do things on my terms while I was still working. I began teaching at that point online. And I was able to kind of still support my family or my growing family and still pursue my education. So it was really the only path for me at that point was that unconventional path.
So when you took the unconventional path, what were you thinking you were going to do with it?
Well, honestly, part of what I was thinking was teaching undergraduates, they're really boneheaded and they really feel entitled. And they're like, I got an A in one class way back when, so I'm going to get an A in your class, right? And I just didn't, I didn't go that way. If you earned an A, you earned an A. Great, congratulations. But otherwise, don't tell me what you did in the past. Let's see what you're doing now. And I found that when I taught master's degree students, that wasn't as much a problem. And I figured, well, when I teach doctoral degree students, maybe that'll be even less of a problem. So I wanted to get my doctoral degree in part so that I could teach at the doctoral level, so that I could work with folks on research projects, which is still something that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And honestly, again, selfishly, you got paid more money if you had your doctoral degree. That's something that our students still benefit from to this day. When they earn their degree, they're telling me about how much more money they're making after they finish.
How was the process for you this time around?
I didn't hear the question.
How was the process for you? Yeah, going through it. Because did you decide you wanted a mentor? Because now, people are annoyed or frustrated and banging their head against the wall. They call you, right? Right. So what did you do?
Oh, okay. So I see. Well, I guess let me answer the question I thought you were asking. How was the process overall? Yeah. And I'll tell you the classwork I felt was fairly easy, fairly straightforward. It was just what I'd been used to. And that's the same experience that many of our students report. When I did get to the dissertation, I had already been using some of the tricks that I have started teaching my students now to kind of line up my dissertation and be ready for it a little bit when I was going in. So I was I've always been a self-starter, and I was very much organized towards that. That doesn't mean it was easy. I had problems, and one of the things that I talk with my students now about, the first step, the thing that's most important, the foundation, I didn't realize that yet at that point, and I kind of skipped over that. And I was lucky enough that one of the dean at one of the schools I was teaching with at the time a guy named Dr. Gary Sutter. He was gracious enough to help me. He helped me recruit students from within that university to participate in my dissertation. And that was kind of the problem that I didn't realize I was going to have, but that's where I ended up getting stuck on my dissertation, was how do I actually get the data? And I wasn't prepared for that as I should have been in the way that we prepare our students now. And having that help, it really did get me over the hump. That's the reason why I think everybody needs help in this process from somewhere. And the person I would point to would be Dr. Sutter. My committee was helpful, but in terms of going above and beyond, this was just a work colleague that was able to help me get over that hurdle that I needed to be able to crest in order to graduate.
So they kind of helped you. They filled that role in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I was stuck on, he was able to tell me, well, I have resources. I can help you. I can put these resources at your disposal. It was really something that I should have been prepared for and planning for, but I'd never been there before. I didn't know. And that's the same story we get from our students all the time now. And I tell them, it's okay. It's kind of, it is where you are in life right now, is that you haven't done this before. And so having someone who can help you to navigate those hurdles is invaluable, and it's almost necessary.
What were the challenges for you? Because like you said, the untraditional route, the unconventional route is you have a wife, you have a family, you have a mortgage, how was that as far as your time goes? Because I'm sure you get this question a lot, which is, it's a lot of time. How'd you do that?
In the dissertation phase, if you're working efficiently and you kind of know what you're doing, we tell our students that we like them to invest 10 to 15 hours a week into the process. I might have spent just a little bit more time than that, but I was very careful in the way that I crafted my work schedule. After I got laid off, one of the things I decided was I am never going to have anybody in control of all of my money again, because I went from doing pretty well to not getting anything, and that was scary. And so when I started teaching, I was teaching for multiple schools at the same time, and I would teach a couple classes here, a couple classes there. If all of a sudden one school kind of went away in terms of offering me courses, that didn't make everything go away. But because of this, I was able to segment my time against the various schools that I was working with, my own school for my degree, as well as the schools that were paying me to teach. And so I did put, probably 15 to 20 hours a week into my dissertation, I would think. But now that we've gotten a little bit better with the planning, we tell our students 10 to 15 hours to get it done.
So you finish your degree. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. What do you do next?
Oh gosh, what do I do next? At that point, I've been working as teaching, and I got a gig teaching doctoral students, and I noticed that the students were definitely having trouble in the dissertation phase. There were students who I was not their chair, but I was on their committee, and I would see it would take a long time for them to do anything. And so eventually I went to one of the in-person events they have. Most of these schools where you're working remotely, they want to bring everybody together a few times at the end of the doctoral process, during the dissertation process, to help teach about the process, to help you meet faculty, to get some face time with folks. And they call these residencies or colloquia. And I attended one of these as a faculty member. And during my office hours, people were coming up to me, and I was hearing the same story over and over again about the problems they were having, the difficulties. And at that meeting, I decided, as I was giving them all my advice as to how I think they should move forward and all this, I started thinking, gosh, I wonder if someone else out there is looking for help and they're not at this colloquia and they're just going to Google to try to see how to answer this question. And so I hung a shingle out, on Google, basically to say, if you're looking for help with your dissertation, let's talk. And I got people to start talking with me, and I was able to start helping them. And it wasn't very long before, instead of teaching at various universities, I was doing all of my work through dissertation done. And I've been so, blessed kind of to have this work, to be able to help interesting people work on interesting things for a living is really, really cool.
Yeah. So you kind of transitioned, and you saw this huge need for people and this huge frustration. Yeah. What were some of the biggest frustrations? What were they coming to you with specifically at the time? And obviously you've seen this over many years and thousands of students.
So it's a little hard for them to articulate sometimes, but quite honestly, the number one thing is I just don't know what the hell I'm doing. And quite honestly, that's perfectly fine. You're a student, you haven't seen this stuff before. This is the first time. And most universities don't do a very good job of providing structure and really walking you through the process. Even though they might tell you what they want you to do ultimately, how to get it done and how to get from point A to point B and to figure out how many points there are from here to graduation, is not something the universities are very good at. And so just simply not knowing what they're doing is one. Some people point to writing issues that, writing at this high level, even though they've written papers for all their doctoral classes, it's another level up, and they complain about that. Another one, the big one, is just being out there on your own. Okay, so even if you think you know what you're doing, how do you keep pace? How do you know if you were a marathon runner? How do you know if you're running a good pace if you don't have like a watch or somebody else with you? If you're just out there on your own, it's impossible to know whether you're moving at the kind of pace that's going to get you to graduation in a reasonable time frame or not. So having that accountability, have someone tell them, this is what you need to get done this week. This is what you need to get done next week after week after week, so that you've got those check-ins and yeah, I'm on track, or no, I'm falling behind, and they're telling me I'm falling behind, so I can take action on that. Those are some of the things that come up over and over again. Now, I could mention other things like data analysis and editing, and how do I do any of a number of different things they have to do. I'm having trouble with my mentor or my chair. Lots and lots of other things come up, but the basic ones are, you need someone to help you figure out the path, to figure out where you're going and how to get there, someone to pace you, make sure that you're getting there on a reasonable basis, and some accountability, someone to talk to each week to say whether you're doing what you're supposed to be doing or not. Those are the main things.
Did you find, Dr. Strickland, that certain types of doctoral students were more attracted to you at first? Because I know you serve a lot of different types of doctoral students now, from nurses to business to psychology. What were some of the initial students, and then kind of what do they look like now?
So I know where you're going with this, but I think I have a little bit of a different answer. To answer the question you just asked, I mean, we work with students primarily in education, business, nursing, and psychology. Those are the big four that we really work with. But we see a lot of other things kind of on the side, things like ministry and criminal justice and public health and healthcare administration and things like that. The common denominator is the way that our process works. Part of your dissertation process has to be to go out and collect data. And that data should be focused on people. Okay. So if you're going to go out and collect data by filling up a beaker in a chemistry class, or by, oscillating some sort of circuit in an electronics lab, we're not the best fit for you. We've actually helped people in both of those fields to graduate. So it does work, but that's not our, middle of the road bread and butter. But why those folks came in and worked is the larger answer to your question is, what we're looking for is people who realize the goal is to finish, to get to graduation as quickly as possible, that their real calling in life is not to be a doctoral student, but to be a doctor, and all the people that they can help once they get to that level, including themselves and their own family. And so that focus is the number one common denominator. Number two is to be coachable, to look at this thing and realize with a little humility, hey, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And if I can get someone to help me through this, that's me being smart, not me being helpless. I'm going out and getting help. I'm being resourceful and finding the help that I need to get me through. Just like, I got stuck on my dissertation and I was able to find a colleague who was able to help me through. So those are two of the big things is focusing on, you got to get this thing done. And that's got to be your number one priority. And then you got to be, coachable. You got to be malleable enough and flexible enough to change tracks a little bit if that's what it takes to hit priority number one, which is to get it done and graduate as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Dr. Strickland, I know you answer a lot of the, kind of painful questions and scenarios throughout the podcast. So I encourage people to go and check out the other episodes, check out dissertationdone.com to learn more. And if they have questions, frustrations, to email you. What else would be beneficial to end on? Any last thoughts about your journey, or just about the dissertation process?
Well, so I will tell you that if you asked me when I started as a traditional graduate student, what I would be doing, at this point in my life, I never would have said that I would be running my own company and helping folks with their dissertation projects. If you asked me when I finished my own dissertation, what I would be doing with my life, I still probably didn't have running my own company and doing this work, this dissertation done work on my list, and certainly not hosting a podcast and writing books and all the other things I've done. If you have it in your identity, if it's part of who you are to want to earn your doctoral degree, and if you're working on, if you're in a doctoral degree program, maybe you've kind of finished the courses and you're working on your dissertation, you absolutely owe it to yourself to get it done and to finish. We can help you, I'm sure. There are other resources out there that can help you. You can do it on your own, but that's tough. The bottom line is stick to it, because life has so many opportunities out there, and they multiply when you are at this level. When you are, when your first name is doctor, then there are so many invitations available to you. A person that I spoke to a couple of years ago, who was in the DC area, said that if you don't have a seat at the table, then you're on the menu. And when your first name is doctor, you've always got a seat at the table. So that's the thing, is just persist, keep at it. If you'd like my help, I'd be happy to do it. I'd be thrilled to talk to you, but keep at it. You owe it to yourself, and all the gifts that you're able to give to this world, you owe it to everybody else as well.
Thank you, Dr. Strickland. Check out dissertationdone.com.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Weiss. I appreciate it.
This has been An Unconventional Life. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe now to keep getting inspirational stories of unconventional lives as soon as they're released. Until then, go out and live your best unconventional life.